What's up guys, it's Z here, welcome back. Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we are updating Sky Strikers. With the release of the magnificent MAVENS set, we finally got the new support we've been waiting from the OCG for such a long time, and now it's time to see if Sky Strikers have what it takes to become actually a decent deck again. And we all know that Sky Striker is one of those decks that when people forget it exists, it's always going to snatch a couple of wins here and there, even in big level events like YCSs and WCQs, and this deck always has the potential to do that because of the way it plays. And with new cards at its arsenal, maybe it can actually fight as a tier 1 or tier 2 contender again. We're just gonna have to wait and see how the meta falls. But for now, without further ado, let's begin with profile. If you enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So starting off with the monsters, we have 3 copies of Ray. This is pretty standard. In any striker build, you're never going to see any less copies of Ray unless you're seeing a hybrid version with something else, but this is a pure list, and we are playing 3 copies of Ray. It's probably the best normal summon that any deck has ever had. It's a card that gets you access to all your link monsters, it dodges every hand trap ever, it recycles itself once your monsters get destroyed so you can get another one. Amazing card overall. We play 1 copy of Rose. Now, in any other build that before we got the support, you would see like 2 or even 3 copies of Rose, but with the new cards that we got, Rose, I feel like it's kind of a card that only serves the purpose of being in the graveyard so you can activate Linkage's second effect to boost your link monsters because you need a light and a dark monster in the graveyard to do that. Rose, as a starter, she's not the greatest just because she doesn't have that quick effect to be able to dodge pretty much anything. So if you normal summon her, you lock all of your spell cards because you have a monster in the main monster zone, and if your opponent has an interruption that can get rid of her from the field, then you have wasted your normal summon for nothing. So she's not the best card to normal summon when you're trying to go for a starter. She's a card that you kind of want to use as an extender, and as an extra card you can send to the grave Hayate to basically boost your monsters with a new spell card that we got. We're playing 1 copy of Strategic Striker Hum. This is one of the new cards that we got in Magnificent Mavens. This card is basically the searchable Sky Striker Kaiju. This card is always treated as a Sky Striker card, and if you control a Sky Striker Ace monster, you can special summon this card to either field by tributing 1 monster on the field, and then if its card is destroyed by battle, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls and destroy it. So this card is basically the Kaiju you're going to be searching with Engage whenever you need it, and the deck does have outs now to monsters that were previously very difficult to deal with, for example, unaffect monsters or stuff like that, like the Arrival Cybers, and all those big bodies that were not affected by cards, or maybe untargetable monsters like an Max that was summoned with Masquerena. This deck had really big problems dealing with its own engine, but now a card like this is very easy to search, it's very easy to get rid of any monster, and the fact that can be, if destroyed by battle, you can target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. Sometimes by giving this to your opponent, you can basically crash it. It's 2500, but with a new spell, you can make your own Hayate 2500, so you can crash your Hayate. You're going to get rid of not only 1 card because you tributed it, but you can also going to get rid of another card when this card is destroyed by battle. You're going to send your Ray or your Rose or whatever you need in the graveyard. You're going to bring back your Ray with your own effect, and then you can go into Kagari. So you're getting rid of 2 cards and while also getting your own engine going. So yeah, this card is a really good one to be able to search. That's it for the monsters. We don't play any hand traps in the deck. This is a blind second build that we're playing only cards break boards. And let's start with the striker package first. So for the spell cards, we have the new card, 3 copies of Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage. Now this card is amazing. So what this card does is that if you control no monsters, as a quick play card, you can send 1 other card you control to the grave and special summon a Sky Striker Ace monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. And if you have at least 1 light and 1 dark Sky Striker Ace monsters on your field or in your graveyard, the summoned monster gains 1000 attack and it locks you from special summoning anything other than Sky Strikers from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. So the cool thing about this card is that it turns Ray into this card and OTK. So if you have Ray, or Rose for that matter, I think it's the same thing, it doesn't matter, as long as you can get a Hayate on the board and then you can get a Rose and Ray in the graveyard, you can attack with Ray, you can then use Ray's effect, summon Hayate attack, you send your Rose to the graveyard, so you have both a light and a dark Sky Strikers in the grave, you activate this card, you send your Hayate to summon your Kagari on the field, Kagari is going to get back linkage, your Kagari has 2500 because you have both a light and a dark in the graveyard, so you attack for 25, so you have done 5500 damage, and linkage is a Sky Striker spell, so it's not once per turn, so you can activate it again, send your Kagari to the graveyard, summon your Hayate, or summon maybe, no, not Hayate, you've already summoned Hayate, summon your Shizuku, and then she's going to be at 2500 as well, you have done 55, you attack with your Shizuku, and that's 8000 exact. Now I know that in order to accomplish this OTK, your opponent has to have nothing on the field, but you do play a really big plethora of cards that are going to either get rid of your opponent's board or maybe steal your opponent's board and link it off for cards like Zeke and then go plays that way. So it does give the deck a way to be able to push, which was one of the Sky Striker biggest problems. It doesn't have enough tools to go for game quick enough, so you have to stall with cards like Mystic Mine until you get all the resources you want. This card fixes that problem in a somewhat of a way, and also the effect to dodge a lot of cards cards. You can, for example, dodge hand traps on Kagari by sending to the grave to summon a Shizuku. You can even sometimes use this effect on multiple copies of cards you don't really care about, because you do play a lot of 3-ofs in the deck that are a lot of once per turns. So if you have multiple copies, you don't really mind. You're getting 2 spells in the grave. For example, if you set a Lightning Storm that you have already activated, you don't want the second copy. By sending this card to the graveyard, you already have 3 spells in the grave, so you can get all your +1 effects with the Sky Striker cards. So yeah, it's a card that can be used offensively. It can sometimes be used defensively to summon a Kaina during your opponent's turn if your opponent has found a way to lock your rain in the graveyard, maybe on Abyss Dweller or something like that. So yeah, this card is really good, and maxing it out, especially in a going second build, makes a lot of sense. Now, for the rest of the Sky Striker cards, we have 3 copies of Widow Anchor. This is pretty standard. This is basically the best Sky Striker card we have at 3 copies right now, because it's a card that acts as Chalice and a Chains of card as well, so it helps you boost very easily. We have 3 copies of Shark Cannon. This card is very format dependent, but in this particular format, it's really good at 3. Being able to banish the monster that Sprite Elf is targeting the graveyard, being able to stop the tier element monsters from the graveyard from getting back into the deck to fuse. Yeah, this card in this particular format is really good. In other formats where they're not super grave based, you can run 2 or even 1 copy sometimes, but right now 3 copies are definitely mandatory. Sometimes it's even better than Widow Anchor in some scenarios, because Widow Anchor, when you activate a card like Dark Ruler No More, it's not going to be able to do anything because you cannot steal monsters that are already negated. So this is why sometimes Shark Cannon can be even better than Widow Anchor. We play 2 copies of Afterburners. This is a blind second build, so the second copy of Afterburners comes up a lot. If you're playing a going first Sky Striker build, then I would play only 1, maybe even 0 sometimes, and siding it. But when going second, the second copy is very powerful, because with this deck you can get 3 spells in the grave very easily. And the format right now, it's not like full monster dependent or full backer dependent. All decks can do a little bit of both, so being able to destroy a monster and a backer with 1 card is really good. And for the 1-offs, we have 1 copy of Engage. This is the best card in the deck, everybody knows that. There is a reason this card is at 1, it is never going to be at more than 1, and it's not the pure version of the deck's problem, it's basically the problem that this card can be slashed pretty much everywhere. If this card was a card that locked you into Sky Strikers or something for the entire turn, then I really think that it could come back to 2 or 3 just for the pure version, but because it's so generic, it's going to stay at 1 forever. A card that we could see come back from the ban list eventually is the 1 copy of Multiroll. I feel like this card is not super unbalanced. It's not like Engage. It's a card that you're only going to see in pure Sky Striker decks. Nobody's going to splash this card with Engage in any other deck, so if this card went to multiple copies, it would just give a boost to the deck, and I'm surprised they didn't do it, just because we knew that we were going to get Sky Striker support very soon, so I thought that maybe they would do it in the ban list, maybe they will do it in the future, and you can imagine that however many copies of this card we have, that's how many we're going to play, because it's a card that makes your spells basically unbeatable. Your opponent cannot chain anything to them, and you can get the Spellbook of Judgment-like effect by sending all of your spells during each end phase to get all of your resources back. We have 1 copy of Hornet Drones. This is giving us basically another starter for the deck so we don't brick, and we have 1 copy of Area Zero. The Area Zero is basically a card that you want to have as many copies as multi-rolls you have. So as long as multi-roll is at 1, you're going to play 1 copy of Area Zero. If we ever get more copies of multi-roll, then maybe Area Zero is a better card to play at 2 or even 3 sometimes, because it can act as a starter by popping it multi-roll. But if you cannot pop your own Area Zero, it's not the greatest card, because you're basically gambling on getting the top excavation, one of your Sky Striker cards. And because we are playing so many cards that are not engine related, you're going to flop a lot of the times with this excavation effect. So it's a card that you can play as a one-off. It's a card that you can send to the grave Hayata very freely. You can get it back sometimes with your multi-roll, and then sometimes get the excavation, but you never want to search for this card. And sometimes hard drawing this card can sometimes give you a plus, but it's a card that you have to see with Ray in order to go that far. So I think 1 of 4 now is enough. Again, if we get more copies of multi-roll from the ban list, then maybe we can consider playing more copies, just because we have better ways of sending it to the graveyard to get a Ray from the deck. And now let's get to the blind second part of the deck, when we do play a lot of cards that help that. So first we start with 3 copies of Mystic Mine. Unfortunately, it's a deck that kind of relies on this card. I wish that wasn't the case, but the new support did not give the deck a new win condition or something that facilitates a win condition that helps. It basically gave it more consistency and an out to some stuff that it did not have an out. So Mystic Mine is still mandatory. I know that a lot of people don't really like playing Sky Strikers like that, but if you want to play the deck competitively, it's the only way to do so. Maybe you can try builds like Therions and builds with Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, but these are so luck dependent on not drawing the brick cards of the deck and opening a starter. So yeah, Mystic Mine, it's a necessary evil for the deck. You have to play it if you want to succeed. We're playing 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talent. This is another amazing card, and we are also playing Pot of Prosperity in the deck, but the thing about this card is that even if you activate Pot of Prosperity, you don't have to draw 2 with this card. You can always steal monsters, or you can even look at your opponent's hand, put them back your follow-up, so if either of you clear their board, they don't have anything to do. So yeah, this card is amazing. We play 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. This is a pretty standard going second card right now. If you're blinding second with pretty much anything, you are maining this card. It's so powerful right now, and especially if you combine it with one of the next 2 cards I'm going to show you, it's literally over. One of the 2 cards is the 3 copies of Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm, when you combine with Dark Ruler No More, if your opponent has all their monsters in attack mode, they are going to suffer a lot. And with the inclusion of Runics in sprites, Lightning Storm is a really good card main deck because your opponent is going to have back row 100% of the time, especially when you're playing against Sprite. Before, so when sprites were a thing, only their pure version, most of the times, they were playing as a pure deck that they're using the frogs and then hand traps. And the only card that they would have set were either Smashers, extra copies of Starter, or Impermanence, in case they drew any of them. But now with the Runics, they set like at least 3 cards every single turn, so Lightning Storm can get a lot of value. And even against Tear Laments, they do play a lot of back row. They play other cards like Super Poly, so you need to be able to clear the cards, because sometimes when you're on a summon array and your opponent Super Polys it with one of their own dark monsters for a Venom or Dragostapelia, that can hurt a lot, so clearing your opponent's back row before you do anything is key for the deck. And we're also playing 3 copies of Evenly Matched. This is the blowout card. When combined with Dark Ruler No More, it's way better than Lightning Storm, because again, all boards now have monsters and back row, so being able to clear all of them besides one, and this one card that they're going to keep on their field, it's very easy to deal with because you have all those go second cards. So yeah, this card is amazing in the main deck and in blind second decks as well. We play 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. If you're looking for a more budget version, you can replace this with Desires and an Upstart, but again, if you want to play this deck competitively, you have to have this card in the deck. It's so being able to see the exact card you want for each scenario is crucial, because Desires in this deck, not only it may banish the one-offs that you need in the grind game, like Engage and Multi-Roll, but it might give you cards you already have. Sometimes your hands are full of destroy cards and you're missing a starter, or vice versa. You have a handful of starters and you want to see some card that is going to destroy your opponent's board, so this is why Pot of Prosperity is such a good card, giving you the exact card you want. At the extra deck, you play 3 copies of pretty much all the important cards, so banishing 1 copy of the cards that you don't really care about for the super grind game is not really necessary to keep them in the extra deck, because you're not going to play mirror matches. If you were playing mirror matches, then yes, you were going to need like 3 Kagaris and 3 Shizukus to grind for an hour, but you're playing a blind second deck that is not going to play for more than 3-4 turns unless you're waiting under Mystic Mine. But if you're doing that, you're not using your extra deck regardless until you get the plays you need, so this is why Prosperity is such a good card. And for the one-offs, we play 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army, mainly to search Ray. There are some scenarios where you're going to search Rose if you already have Ray to get an extender for Zeke, but you're mainly searching for Ray. 1 copy of Terraforming to get Mystic Mine or Area 0 if you're looking for a way to get to Ray if you have drawn a multi or something like that. And 1 copy of Call by the Grave because it's an absurd card on its own. And for the extra deck, it's pretty standard, I would say. We're playing 3 copies of Kagari, nothing to explain about this card. You get back your spells, really good. We're playing 3 copies of Shizuku, getting a search during the end phase. We're playing 3 copies of Hayate. In this particular build, because of linkage, I feel like 3 Hayate is now necessary. Before, you could go away with playing only 2, but now you use Hayate so often with linkage, being able to attack directly over and over again, you're going to go through 3 more often than you're not. So this is why we're playing 3 copies of it, because we need to win eventually, and this is one of the main reasons we're doing so. We're summoning a Hayate with 2500 attack because of linkage, so this is why we can deal more damage than 4. So yeah, I feel like 3 copies of this card is now necessary. We're playing 1 copy of Kaina. This is here to stop the OTKs. We're playing 2 copies of Zeke. When you're playing talents in your deck, you're going to steal monsters a lot of the times. With Widow Anchor, you can sometimes not need the second one, go away with only playing 1, but when you're playing talents, you're going to steal monsters very often, especially if you have Activate Prosperity and you're not going through a 2 effect, so you need the second copy of Zeke for the grind game, be able to link away all the monsters you steal. We play 1 copy of Dark, the Dark Charmer Gloomy. This is a card that as long as Tear Laments are a thing, you're going to play this card in pretty much any extra deck you can summon it. It's very powerful. We're playing 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn. These next 2 cards are mainly here when you're stealing monsters, either with Lumi or Talents or Widow Anchor. You are never going to summon them by using your own resources because they're link 3 and link 4, but because you can steal so many monsters, they can sometimes come up when you want to get rid of more monsters, and Unicorn can let you spin another card. And we're also playing 1 copy of Access Code, mainly when you're stealing something like a Masquerena or a link to like an Elf, one of your cards, or even your Dark Charmer from your opponent's graveyard with them, because Masquerena is a dark monster, you can then summon Access Code. And even though the deck did lose Fibrax, which was a very crucial part of the deck being able to finish off games with Selene and Access Code, it can still kinda do it, not to the same extent, but at least we're not forced to play hand traps anymore because we needed to play tuners in order to be able to do that prior, but now we can focus on the power spells and the power cards that we need to go second and use these cards when we can steal enough monsters from our opponents to be able to link a climb to such big monsters. So yep, that's the deck, guys. Sky Strikers, you always know that no matter what kind of format we're in, there will be some dedicated players that are going to make it work, and it's going to happen every time. It's happened basically every single format, even when Engage was banned, so we can expect to happen over and over again. And with new cards, I'm just eager to see what people are going to figure out about the deck and how much success they can have, because I'm a big fan of Strikers. I wish we didn't have to play a card like Mystic Mine in the deck, but alas, it's something that we have to play in order to win, so we might as well, as long as it's legal. So yeah, we're going to see how the format unfolds and what Sky Strikers can do moving forward. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.